The fluorescent lights buzzed like angry hornets overhead as Evelyn Harper slumped against the cold metal armrest of Gate 17 at JFK Airport, her arthritic fingers fumbling with the last crumpled 20 in her purse. "You think I'd drag myself across 3 states just to watch you all scatter like roaches?" she rasped into her phone, voice cracking like dry autumn leaves. But the line had gone dead. Her daughter, son-in-law, and their perfect suburban spawn already halfway to the Bahamas, their abandonment sealed with a hurried kiss on her cheek and a promise of, "We'll call from the resort, Mom." In that sterile limbo of delayed flights and echoing announcements, Evelyn's heart didn't break. It ignited, her mind flashing to the one soul she'd always known deserved better. The boy they'd shunned, her Harry, the grandson with rainbows in his eyes and a love they'd called a sin. Evelyn's eyes, sharp as the winter winds off the Hudson, scanned the terminal's chaos. Harried businessmen barking into earbuds, families herding sticky-fingered kids toward Cinnabon, a lone janitor pushing a mop that sloshed forgotten coffee across the tile. She was 84, her body a map of faded tattoos from her wild Navy days in Nam, though she'd never admit the ink was from a drunken shore leave in San Diego, not some battlefield glory, and her mind, fogged by the early creep of dementia, clung to fragments like lifelines. The family had dumped her here 2 days ago, citing one last adventure before the nursing home loomed. But Evelyn knew the truth. Her stories of Woodstock and civil rights marches embarrassed them at PDA meetings, and her quiet insistence that love was love, no matter the skin or the shape of the heart, made her a relic they couldn't sell on eBay. As the boarding call for Miami crackled over the speakers, ironic, since her flight was to nowhere, she pulled out a dog-eared notebook, its pages yellowed like old love letters, and began to write. Not a suicide note. Mind you, Evelyn Harper didn't do half measures. This was a will, scrawled in looping cursive that danced like she'd spiked her insurer with bourbon. Everything to Harry. The brownstone in Brooklyn, the vintage Mustang rusting in the garage, the shoebox of war bonds tucked under her mattress, all of it. Let the vultures circle. She'd risen from worse than their greed. Back in Brooklyn, Harry Whitaker nursed a black coffee in their cramped Bushwick apartment, the kind of place where the radiator clanged like a bad jazz solo and the walls whispered secrets through thin plaster. At 28, he was a graphic designer by day, sketching logos for indie bands that never broke Spotify's top 100, and by night, the unofficial therapist for his boyfriend Chris, who paced the kitchenette like a caged panther. Chris Malone, 31, all broad shoulders and Irish freckles from his Boston roots, slammed a cabinet door hard enough to rattle the mismatched mugs. Your family's poison, Harry. Straight up hemlock in a casserole dish. And now this, leaving you to clean up their mess while they sip piña coladas. Harry's phone had buzzed an hour ago with a voicemail from his mom, Evelyn's daughter, Karen, her voice syrupy with false regret. Mom's. Delayed. Handle it, Harry. You're so good with the elderly stuff. Good with the elderly stuff. As if his weekend visits to Evelyn's brownstone, trading stories of Stonewall over her famous apple pie, were some quirky hobby like bird-watching. Harry scrolled through old texts from his grandma, her emojis always rainbows or hearts, the only family member who'd shown up to his and Chris's commitment ceremony 2 years back in a rainbow shawl that clashed gloriously with her bifocals. Chris dropped onto the sagging couch beside him, his calloused hand, rough from years as a firefighter in Queens, sliding over Harry's thigh in that familiar, grounding way. Babe, you're spiraling. Talk to me. Harry's dark curls fell into his eyes, hazel flecked with the gold Evelyn always said came from his late grandpa. the one who died loving her fiercely despite the whispers. It's not just the airport crap. What if she's really gone this time? They abandon her every holiday. But this feels final. Chris pulled him close, the scent of his Old Spice and faint smoke clinging like a promise. They'd met 3 years ago at a Pride after-party in the village. Harry sketching caricatures of drag queens while Chris nursed a beer, fresh off a shift where he'd pulled a kid from a warehouse blaze. One look, Harry's shy grin meeting Chris's cocky wink, and it was like the world tilted, gravity pulling them into stolen kisses behind food trucks and lazy Sundays tangled in sheets that smelled like takeout lo mein. But love in New York was a grind. Chris's PTSD from the job, Harry's freelance droughts, the constant hum of "when are you two making it official?" From friends who didn't get that rings weren't the point. Survival was. The call came at dawn, as the city stirred with garbage trucks and distant sirens. An airport security guard, voice clipped like he'd rather be anywhere else. "Mr. Whitaker, your grandmother, Evelyn Harper. She's unwell. Paramedics en route to Mount Sinai. Said to tell you the will's in the notebook. And don't let the bastards grind you down." Harry's stomach dropped like the express elevator in the Empire State, and he was out the door before Chris could grab his keys, hailing a yellow cab that reeked of yesterday's falafel. Traffic clotted the Brooklyn Bridge like always, horns blaring a symphony of impatience, and Harry pressed his forehead to the window, watching the skyline pierce the smoggy pink sky. Evelyn had been his anchor since he came out at 16. The family dinner shattering like cheap crystal when his dad, Karen's ex, called him a disappointment and stormed out. But Grandma? She'd baked him a cake that said, "Proud as punch" in rainbow icing, then driven him to his first GSA meeting in her ancient Plymouth, blasting Judy Garland the whole way. "Family's what you build, kiddo," she'd say, her voice gravelly from Chesterfield Reds she'd quit decades ago. Blood's just the messy part. Mount Sinai's ER was a fluorescent hell of beeping monitors and harried nurses in scrubs the color of faded hope. Harry burst through the doors, Chris hot on his heels. He'd insisted on coming. His turnout gear swapped for a hoodie that hid the tattoo of a phoenix on his bicep, inked after a close call with a collapsing roof. They found Evelyn in a curtained bay, for dripping into her vein like liquid mercy, her silver hair fanned on the pillow like a halo gone rogue. "Harry, my boy," she wheezed, eyes lighting up despite the oxygen mask fogging her breath. "Took you long enough. Traffic's a bitch." "Ha!" He collapsed into the plastic chair, grasping her hand, cold, but still strong enough to squeeze. Chris hung back, respectful as always, his firefighter's instinct scanning for exits and threats in the sterile chaos. "Gran, what the hell? Mom said you were adventuring." Evelyn chuckled, a wet rattle that twisted Harry's gut. "Adventuring into their guilt trip. More like left me at the terminal with a vending machine pretzel and a pat on the head. But I fixed them good." She nodded to the bedside table, where a rumpled notebook lay like a grenade with the pin pulled. The will was there, witnessed by a board gate agent and a traveling salesman who'd mistaken her for a bag lady at first. Everything to Harry. The brownstone worth a cool $1 million in today's market. The Mustang she'd babied since '68. Even her collection of signed first editions from the Beats, Kerouac, Ginsberg. The lot. "You're the only one who gets it, Harry," she murmured, her grip tightening. "Love like yours, fierce, unapologetic. Chris too. That boy's got fire in him." Chris stepped forward then, his Boston accent thickening with emotion. "Mrs. Harper, you don't owe us. Evelyn, damn it. And I owe you both for making my grandson smile like the sun broke through Jersey clouds. Tears stung Harry's eyes, but he blinked them back. Evelyn hated waterworks. Instead, he leaned in, pressing a kiss to her forehead, inhaling the faint lavender of her soap, the one she'd used since he was a kid braiding wildflowers into her hair during Central Park picnics. But New York doesn't do quiet victories. By noon, the family's plane touched down, and Karen's texts exploded like fireworks gone wrong. What do you mean, Will? Mom's confused, dementia talking. We're contesting this, Harry. It's family property. Betrayal hit like a subway gust, hot and unforgiving. Harry's aunt, Uncle Bob, the whole clan descended like locusts, their concern laced with dollar signs. Chris fielded the calls while Harry sat vigil, his sketchpad forgotten in his lap, doodling Evelyn's face with lines that softened her pain into peace. They're not getting a dime, Chris growled over lukewarm coffee, his free hand massaging Harry's tense shoulders. We'll lawyer up. Pro bono if we have to. I've got buddies at the FD who know a guy. Their love was like that. Chris the shield, Harry the spark. Nights blurred into a haze of hospital jello and whispered dreams, remodeling the brownstone into a queer artist co-op, road-tripping the Mustang cross-country to every pride flag from sea to shining sea. Evelyn rallied for a week, enough time for stolen moments, her teaching Chris to shuck oysters in the cafeteria, like this, fireman twist and pop, just like popping the question someday. Harry reading her Ginsberg aloud until she dozed, murmuring Howl in her sleep. But the cancer pancreatic, stage 4, the kind that sneaks up like a mugger in an alley, had been gnawing longer than anyone knew. On a rainy Tuesday, as thunder rattled the windows like God's own tantrum, she slipped away mid-sentence, her last words a garbled love. Wins. Out. Harry shattered then, sobs racking him until Chris bundled him into a cab, back to Bushwick where the radiator's clangs mocked their grief. The funeral was a farce, Karen's eulogy dripping crocodile tears over Mom's eccentricities, the family eyeing Harry like he'd stolen their inheritance with a smile. He buried her in Greenwood Cemetery, under a oak that whispered secrets to the wind, her headstone simple, Evelyn Harper, lover of jazz, justice, and just about everything else. The reading came a month later, in a stuffy midtown office that smelled of stale cigars and broken promises. The lawyer, a wiry guy named Saul with a yarmulke and a Brooklyn drawl, laid it out plain, ironclad, notarized, no contest. The brownstone was Harry's, free and clear. The Mustang gleamed in impound, waiting for keys. Karen's face curdled like milk left in the sun. This is blackmail. Mom was manipulated, but Saul shut her down with a stack of precedents thicker than a phone book. Uncle Bob lunged once, red-faced and sputtering about unnatural lifestyles. But Chris stepped in, his firefighter bulk a quiet wall. Voice low, touch him, and you'll need more than family to pull you out. The betrayal cut deepest from his mom, who'd once been his soft place before the divorce hardened her. As they stormed out, vowing appeals and disownment, Harry felt Evelyn's notebook burn in his pocket like a talisman. That night, in the brownstone's echoing halls, creaky floors and wallpaper peeling like old skin, Harry and Chris cracked open a bottle of Evelyn's hoarded bourbon, the good stuff from Kentucky, amber as regret. Dust motes danced in the moonlight slanting through lace curtains, and Harry traced the scars on Chris's knuckles, souvenirs from ladder climbs and heartbreaks past. She saw us. You know, really saw. Chris nodded, pulling him onto the threadbare Persian rug, their bodies aligning like puzzle pieces worn smooth by time. Kisses turned hungry, clothes shed in a trail from parlor to stairs, the air thick with the scent of aged wood and desire unhurried. In the master bedroom, under a quilt Evelyn had pieced from feed sacks during the Depression, they moved together, slow at first, reverent, then fierce, Harry's gasps mingling with Chris's groans, a symphony of release. "Marry me," Chris whispered afterward, breath hot against Harry's neck. A ring pilfered from his ma's attic box, simple gold with a Celtic knot. Not for the family, not for the world, just for them, a vow etched in sweat and starlight. But dawn brought the wolves, tabloid headlines screaming Granny's gay giveaway, shocking Will Rock's Wasp clan, courtesy of a source close to the family. Protests outside the brownstone, bigots with signs decrying Sodom's inheritance, egged on by Uncle Bob's Facebook rants. Harry's inbox flooded with hate mail, freelance gigs dried up overnight, and Chris's captain pulled him aside at the station. "Heard about the drama, Malone? Keep your head down. Politics in the house." The climax erupted on a sweltering July 4th, fireworks popping like gunfire over the East River. Karen showed up unannounced, flanked by a sleazy PI who dug up dirt. Photos of Harry and Chris at underground raves, blurred kisses twisted into scandal. "Give it back, or we go public. Think of your career, your lifestyle." Betrayal's knife twisted deep, her eyes, Evelyn's eyes, cold as the Hudson in winter. Harry stood in the doorway, the notebook clutched like armor, voice steady. "You abandoned her. Twice. Once at the terminal, once in life. This isn't about money. It's about love she chose to give." Chris, fresh off shift, barreled up the stoop just as Karen's PI shoved Harry, a clumsy grab for the notebook that sent him stumbling. Fire ignited in Chris's veins. He grabbed the guy's collar, slamming him against the wrought iron fence with a thud that echoed down the block. "Back the fuck off," sirens wailed in the distance. Irony's cruel joke, and neighbors peeked from brownstones, phones out like vultures with cameras. Karen shrieked, dialing 911, spinning the tale of assault by the boyfriend, but Harry stepped between them, heart pounding like a bass drum at a dyke march. "Enough. Take the car, the bonds, hell, take the house." But the words, Evelyn's words, "stay with me," in the chaos, as blue lights flashed and statements were taken, something shifted. Karen's facade cracked, tears real this time, a whisper escaping, "She always loved you more. I was jealous of that." The PI slunk away, charges dropped when body cams showed the shove, and the family retreated, tails between legs, their greed exposed like a raw nerve. In the aftermath, as summer bled into fall's crimson blaze, Harry and Chris rebuilt. The brownstone became a haven, walls stripped to brick, studios for queer artists fleeing red states, open mic nights where stories flowed like Evelyn's bourbon. They married in Greenwood, under that whispering oak. A small affair with rainbow lanterns and Ginsberg readings, Chris's ma toasting with a brogue thick as peat. No fanfare, just vows exchanged in the dappled shade. Through fires and floods, "I'll choose you." Harry designed their rings, interlocking flames, gold and rose, and the Mustang roared back to life, carrying them west on Route 66, chasing sunsets Evelyn would have chased in her youth. Betrayal's scars faded, not gone but woven into the tapestry, a reminder that family wasn't blood's monopoly. Years later, on anniversaries, They'd return to JFK's Gate 17. That bench now a plaque in her honor. For the wanderers who stayed true. Harry would sketch the terminal's bustle. Chris's arm around his waist. Their laughter mingling with the announcements. Love, Evelyn had taught, wasn't a terminal stop. It was the journey, unexpected and utterly, defiantly human. And in America's vast, bruised heart, they'd carved their place, unabandoned, unbreakable. The Mustang's engine growled like a beast rousing from hibernation as Harry twisted the key, the dashboard lights flickering to life in the dim garage light of the brownstone. It had been 3 months since Evelyn's passing, and the ink on the will had barely dried before the first cracks in their peace appeared. Not from the family, who'd slunk back to their McMansions with tails tucked, but from within, where doubt festered like mold in the subway tunnels. Chris slid into the passenger seat, his knees bumping the glove box, a six-pack of Yangling sweating on the vinyl between them. Road trip? Now, babe? The co-op's walls are half-painted, and your inbox is a war zone. Harry's grin was tight, forced, the kind that didn't reach his hazel eyes shadowed by sleepless nights. Exactly why. Evelyn's ghost is rattling chains in here, says we need to breathe before we suffocate. Truth was, the hate mail had morphed into something uglier. Anonymous letters slipped under the door, scrawled with slurs that made his stomach churn. Echoes of the coming-out dinner when his father's belt had left welts that faded but never vanished. They hit the road at dusk, the Brooklyn skyline shrinking in the rearview like a bad memory. I-95 unspooling south toward Virginia, where Chris's roots tangled in Boston Irish stubbornness but dipped into southern drawls from a childhood split between coasts. The Mustang hugged the curves, wind whipping through cracked windows, carrying the faint scent of Evelyn's Chanel No. 5 from the glove compartment Bible hollowed out to hide her emergency flask. Chris fiddled with the ancient radio, static crackling until Patsy Cline's Crazy filled the cab, her voice a velvet ache that had Evelyn swaying in the kitchen during pancake Sundays. Remember when she caught us necking on the porch swing? Chris chuckled, his hand finding Harry's on the stick shift, thumb tracing the callus from endless sketches. Told us to get a room or get a grip, preferably both. Harry laughed, genuine this time, the sound loosening the knot in his chest. Their love had always been a quiet rebellion. Stolen glances at family barbecues where cousins side-eyed them. Marathon movie nights with Evelyn mediating when Chris's nightmares jerked him awake. Screaming of flames that weren't just literal. But betrayal's shadow lingered. Not just from Karen's desperate grab, but from Harry's own buried fears. Late nights, when Chris snored softly beside him, Harry would stare at the ceiling cracks mapping like veins, wondering if he was worth the war. The inheritance had painted a target. Queer grandson scores matriarch's fortune. Headlines that twisted Evelyn's gift into a trope, fueling forums where trolls dissected their lives like lab specimens. You're overthinking, Chris would murmur, pulling him close, their bodies slotting together in the dark, skin warm against the chill of Brooklyn October. Sex was their sacrament, tender explorations that mapped scars and sighs, Harry's fingers tracing the ladder of Chris's ribs, Chris's lips worshipping the curve of Harry's hip. Yet even in climax, doubt whispered, was this real, or just Evelyn's ghost holding them aloft? The first stop was a roadside diner in Jersey, neon sign buzzing "Eat," like a dare, Formica counters sticky with ghost syrup. Over greasy eggs and hash browns that crunched like autumn leaves, Chris's phone lit up, a text from his captain. Transfer offer, DC. Better pay, less drama. Think about it. Harry's fork paused mid-air, yolk dripping like unspoken accusations. DC? That's far. Chris shrugged, Boston nonchalance masking the plea in his green eyes. Not forever. Just until the heat dies down. Your co-op's thriving, those murals you did? Viral on Insta. You don't need me cramping your style. Cramping. The word landed like a sucker punch, evoking high school lockers slammed in his face, whispers of fag trailing like smoke. Harry pushed his plate away, appetite soured. Style? This is us, Chris. Evelyn left it to me because she believed in us. The diner hummed around them, truckers laughing over pie, a waitress with a name tag reading Darlene, refilling coffees with weary grace. But their booth felt like a pressure cooker, steam rising from words unsaid. They drove in silence after. The radio silenced. Only the tires thrum and occasional semis whoosh. Chris broke first. As always, his hand heavy on Harry's knee. I'm scared too. Okay, that PI shit made me flash back to the warehouse fire, the one where I froze, and Jimmy didn't make it. Harry's heart clenched. Chris rarely spoke of the ghosts that woke him, sweat-soaked and shaking. You didn't freeze. You saved 3 others. Chris's jaw tightened, freckles stark against flushed skin. Captain says DC's a fresh start. No tabloids tailing my rig. No hero firefighter dates the gold-digging queer bullshit. Gold-digging. The slur sliced. Betrayal not from family now, but from the man who'd vowed forever under an oak. Harry pulled over at a rest stop, gravel crunching under tires, the air thick with diesel and despair. Is that what you think this is? Me? Some kept boy in Grandma's castle. Tears burned, hot as the Virginia sun dipping low. Chris reached, but Harry flinched first time ever. No, babe God. No. It's the world. It's them making me doubt us. They made up in a Super 8 off the interstate. The room smelling of Lysol and regret. Neon vacancy sign pulsing through thin curtains like a heartbeat. Chris dropped to his knees first. Apology in every brush of lips against Harry's belt buckle. Hands reverent as he undid the zipper. Let me show you, he murmured, voice rough as sandpaper, taking Harry into his mouth with a devotion that unraveled doubts like frayed thread. Harry threaded fingers through Chris's ginger hair, gasps echoing off cinderblock walls, the world narrowing to heat and hitch of breath. Later, tangled in starched sheets, Chris traced patterns on Harry's back, flames morphing to rainbows. DC was stupid talk. I'm in, all the way. Marry me for real, Harry. Not just whispers. The ring, that Celtic knot, glinted on the nightstand, borrowed but binding. Harry nodded, throat tight, their lovemaking shifting to something sacred, slow rocks and shared breaths, building to a crescendo that left them boneless, whispering futures over the hum of the AC. Richmond welcomed them with antebellum ghosts and James River fog. Chris's old precinct a quick detour where buddies slapped his back and grilled him on The Windfall. Harry wandered the fan district's murals. Vibrant queer icons splashed across brick, sketching feverishly, the pencil a lifeline pulling him from the abyss. But conflict brewed anew. A voicemail from Saul the lawyer. Voice grave. Families appealing on undue influence. Claiming Evelyn was coerced. Your visits. The will's timing. Need you back for depots. Betrayal's second act. Karen's desperation morphing to vendetta. Her emails now laced with for mom's sake piety that masked greed. Chris overheard. Rage flaring like a backdraft. Let him try. We'll bury him in court. But Harry saw the toll. Chris's hands shaking as he gripped the wheel. Nightmares returning with Evelyn's terminal bench as the blaze. They pushed south to the Outer Banks. Dunes whispering secrets to the Atlantic. The Mustang parked nose to the surf. Salt air scoured clean. And for a stolen weekend, they were just two guys, building sandcastles that mimicked the brownstone's turrets. Racing waves like kids. Evelyn's flask passed in sunset toasts. To love that leaves everything, Harry said, clinking plastic cups. Chris pulled him down to the blanket, kisses tasting of brine and bourbon, hands exploring with the urgency of tides. Under a canopy of stars, they made love with the ocean's roar as chorus. Harry's cries swallowed by waves, Chris's strength an anchor in the swell. Dawn found them bruised and blissful, but the road called back, reality's hook yanking them north. Back in Brooklyn, the co-op buzzed. Artists like Mia, a trans sculptor fleeing Texas, and Jamal, a poet with verses sharp as switchblades, turning the space into a beacon. Harry's designs flourished. Murals of Evelyn as a rainbow warrior gracing the facade. But the lawsuit loomed like storm clouds over the Verrazano. Depositions were a gauntlet. Karen on the stand, tear-streaked, spinning tales of Harry's manipulation, late-night calls, influencing Evelyn with that lifestyle. Uncle Bob blustered about traditional values. His face purple as overripe plums. Chris testified last, voice steady as a siren's wail. Evelyn chose Harry because he chose her back, every day, with pie and patience. That's love, not coercion. The courtroom, a wood-paneled relic in Lower Manhattan, hung on his words. The judge, a silver-haired lesbian with a gavel like thunder, nodding subtly. Climax crested in the hallway after, Karen cornering Harry, her Chanel perfume cloying as lies. You won, Fairy. Happy now? Mom's rolling in her grave, but her eyes cracked, hollow, betrayed the bluff. No grave for her. She's in every brick, every laugh here. Chris appeared then, arm around Harry's waist, a united front. Karen deflated, signing the dismissal papers that afternoon, the family scattering like ash in wind. Victory tasted bittersweet, the brownstones deed heavier now with ghosts laid to rest. Winter blanketed the city in hush, snow muffling the co-op's open house, queer elders swapping stories with young firebrands, Evelyn's first editions loaned to a pop-up library. Harry and Chris exchanged rings properly, a city hall affair with Jamal officiating in robes sewn from pride flags. In the face of abandonment, you built, he intoned, as confetti rained like grace. Their honeymoon was the Mustang, looping upstate to Woodstock's fields, where Evelyn had danced barefoot in '69. In a cabin by a frozen lake, they shed layers, literal and not, fire crackling as Chris knelt again. Not in apology but adoration, taking Harry apart with lips and tongue until pleas dissolved into moans. Forever, Chris vowed, entering him slow, their rhythm a dance of equals, climax crashing like thunder over hills. Yet humanism's thread wove deeper. A letter arrived spring, postmarked suburbia, Karen's script shaky. I was wrong. Mom's bench, let's visit together. Forgiveness wasn't erasure, but a bridge. They met at JFK. Awkward hugs thawing to tears. Evelyn's plaque gleaming under fluorescence. She left it to you, Karen whispered, but loved us all, messy as we are. Harry nodded, Chris's hand in his. The terminal's bustle a reminder. Abandonment ends where choice begins. Spring unfurled in Brooklyn like a hesitant flag. Cherry blossoms dusting the brownstone stoop in pink confetti. A fragile truce after winter's siege. The co-op thrummed with life now. Mia's sculptures of intertwined bodies, bronze and unashamed, guarded the foyer. Jamal's poetry slams echoed from the basement, verses carving space for the invisible. Harry woke to sunlight slanting through the bay window, Chris's arm slung heavy across his waist, breath warm against his neck. 30. Their bodies knew each other's geographies. The freckle cluster on Chris's shoulder like Orion's belt, the sensitive hollow behind Harry's ear that drew forth shivers like Morse code. But peace was a jealous lover, quick to flee at dawn's first doubt. Harry's phone buzzed on the nightstand, a freelance offer from a San Francisco startup. Remote but tempting, words like lead designer and 6 figures glinting like fool's gold. Chris stirred, mumbling into the pillow, "Tell him no. We're rooted here, rooted." The word anchored and chafed. Evelyn's legacy a garden demanding tending. The brownstone, once a mausoleum of dust and doilies, now hosted weekly potlucks where elders like Mr. Rosario, a retired drag king from the 80s scene, swapped war stories with 20-somethings fleeing Bible Belt basements. Harry orchestrated it all, sketches evolving into blueprints for expansions, a rooftop greenhouse for urban queers to grow their own herbs, a mural wall chronicling Evelyn's life in vibrant strokes. Chris dove in too. His off days spent hauling lumber or grilling burgers at block parties, his laugh booming over the grill's sizzle. Their marriage, 6 months fresh, was a quiet revolution. No white tuxes or tiered cakes, just a backyard vow renewal under fairy lights, rings exchanged with toasts to the fire that doesn't consume. Nights ended in the master bath's clawfoot tub, bubbles foaming as Chris massaged Harry's feet, kisses trailing up thighs to where desire pooled hot and insistent. "You're my home," Chris would growl, lifting him against the tile, water sluicing as they joined, thrusts deep and deliberate, Harry's nails raking Chris's back in crescendos of release. Yet conflict simmered beneath the bloom. Karen's olive branch had sprouted tentative visits, awkward teas in the parlor, her apologies wrapped in store-bought shortbread that crumbled like her resolve. "I envied how she looked at you," she'd confess, eyes downcast, fingers twisting a napkin embroidered with Evelyn's initials. Harry forgave in pieces, not for her but for the humanism Evelyn preached, grace as the ultimate rebellion. But Chris bristled, his protectiveness a shield edged with rust. "She's poison ivy. Babe, pretty leaves." Itching regret. One evening, as rain lashed the windows like accusations, Karen arrived soaked, clutching a shoebox of Evelyn's letters, unsent missives to Harry, penned in her looping hand. "My boy, where your heart loud. The world's noise needs your song." Reading them aloud by lamplight, voices overlapping in harmony, the 3 of them wept, barriers dissolving in salt. Chris softened then, offering a gruff hug, for Evelyn, but betrayal's echo lingered in Harry's dreams. Visions of the terminal, Evelyn's figure blurring into Karen's, abandonment a cycle he feared repeating. The real storm brewed from without, a developer circling the block, suits with clipboards eyeing the brownstone zoning for luxury condos. Prime real estate, the lead shark, a slick midtown type named Vance with a Rolex that screamed old money, purred over coffee at the co-op's kitchen table. "We could relocate you, generous buyout." Harry's blood iced. This was Evelyn's fortress, willed against such greed. "Not for sale. It's a community space. Vance's smile didn't reach his eyes, cold as Wall Street fog. Everything's for sale, Mr. Whitaker. Think of the taxes, the upkeep. Chris, wiping flour from his hands after a baking demo for the elders, loomed behind. Doors that way. The threat hung implicit, eminent domain whispers. City council palms greased, but Vance's parting shot landed low. Heard about your arrangement. Donors like stability. Homophobia veiled as business. Betrayal from the system Evelyn had fought tooth and nail. Nights turned restless. Harry pacing the creaky floors while Chris tossed in bed. PTSD flaring in the developer's shadow. Reminders of losses to urban decay. Buildings collapsing under neglect. Fight it, Harry urged, curling into him, legs entwining like roots. Chris's hands roamed, cupping Harry's ass, pulling him atop in a straddle that grounded them both. We will. Mouths met fierce, tongues dueling as Harry ground down, friction building until Chris flipped them, entering with a groan that vibrated through bone. The rhythm was urgent, bed frame protesting like a chorus, Harry's release spilling hot as Chris followed, collapsing in a tangle of limbs and labored breaths. Together, they panted, the word a mantra against the fray. The co-op mobilized. Petitions circulated at farmers' markets. Viral campaigns hashtagged Evelyn's legacy. Queer activists chaining themselves to the stoop in mock arrests that drew news vans like flies to honey. Harry fronted the press, sketchpad in hand, rendering Vance as a faceless suit devouring brownstones. Cartoons that trended on X, amplifying the roar. Chris coordinated security, his firefighter network turning out en masse. Turnout gear a symbolic armor. Climax detonated at a zoning hearing in Borough Hall. Wood-paneled and stuffy as a cigar lounge. Vance's team parading experts on economic revitalization, while residents testified. Mr. Rosario on lost havens of the AIDS crisis. Mia on sanctuaries for the displaced. Karen surprised them all, taking the mic with trembling hands. My mother built this home on love, not ledgers. Honor that. The room hushed, her words a bridge burned and rebuilt. The vote swung narrow, denied. Vance slinking out with a glare that promised appeals. But for now, victory's champagne popped in the backyard, toasts echoing under string lights. Summer scorched in, the rooftop greenhouse bursting with tomatoes red as passion. Co-op barbecues drawing crowds that spilled into the street. Harry and Chris stole moments amid the chaos. A quick fumble in the pantry, Harry's back against flour sacks, Chris's fingers deft inside him, stifling moans with a kiss as laughter filtered through the door. Romance deepened in quieter beats. Dusk walks along the promenade, hands linked, watching ferries slice the East River, Evelyn's stories retold like prayers. But betrayal's undercurrent stirred anew. Chris's captain calling late, voice heavy, Malone, the brass is leaning. That hearing made waves. Consider the transfer, quietly, DC again, a siren song of stability, pulling at the seams. Harry confronted it over pierogies at a Polish spot in Greenpoint, candlelight flickering on pierogi dough. Is it the fight, or me? Chris's fork clattered, green eyes stormy. It's the job. Saving lives, not headlines. But you, God, Harry, you're the reason I stay. The confession cracked open old wounds. Chris's ex, a Wall Street wolf who'd bailed when the PTSD hit, leaving scars deeper than burns. Harry reached across, lacing fingers. Then fight with me. Here, they left arm in arm, the night air cooling tempers, tumbling into bed with a tenderness that built slow, kisses like rain, Chris's tongue tracing Harry's collarbone, fingers curling inside until he arched, begging. Entry was exquisite agony, faces inches apart, breaths sinking in thrusts that crested in shared shudders, afterglow a cocoon of whispers, no transfers. Just us. Fall gilded the leaves. The co-op's first exhibit, Roots and Rainbows, drawing gallery snobs who feigned disinterest but bought prints anyway. Vance's appeal crumbled under public scrutiny, his firm backpedaling with a donation to community causes, hypocrisy sweetened by the win. Karen integrated slowly, volunteering at potlucks, her laughter tentative but real, a humanistic arc bending toward redemption. Evelyn's birthday brought them all to the terminal, balloons tied to the bench, stories shared with strangers who paused, drawn by the circle of light. She left everything, Harry said, arm around Chris, Karen nodding beside. But mostly, her heart. As leaves turned to frost, Harry sketched their future. Expansions, travels, perhaps kids via surrogacy, rainbow families in Evelyn's image. Chris proposed expansions of his own. Over Thanksgiving turkey. Adopt a pup? Start small. Laughter bubbled, leading to the kitchen floor. Clothes discarded in haste. Chris taking him against the fridge. Magnets clattering like applause. Their union fierce and fertile with promise. Betrayal faded to footnote. Love's drama yielding to enduring romance, human, flawed, American as apple pie with a twist of lime. November's chill nipped at the brownstone's eaves like a persistent X. Frost etching windows in filigree patterns that caught the first snowflakes like secrets. The co-op had evolved into a microcosm of resilience. Holiday markets in the parlor hawking queer-crafted ornaments, glitter-dipped feathers and ceramic flames, while the basement theater hosted Evelyn's Follies, improv nights where elders lampooned their youth scandals. Harry thrived in the whirlwind, his designs commissioned for off-Broadway sets, curls perpetually dusted with paint flecks like accidental constellations. Chris, promoted to lieutenant after a daring rooftop rescue in Red Hook, wore the stripes with quiet pride, his turnout gear hung by the door like a sentinel. Their mornings were rituals. Coffee brewed strong as Chris's ma's, shared over the Times crossword. Harry's foot hooked around Chris's calf under the table, a silent tether. But romance's flame, though steady, flickered with the winds of change. A letter from Saul arrived crisp as fresh bills. Residual funds from Evelyn's bonds, enough for a down payment on a satellite space upstate, a retreat for artists in crisis. Your grand's legacy grows, the lawyer scrawled, but the windfall stirred undercurrents. Chris eyed the figures over dinner. Vegan lasagna Mia had dropped off, layers of empathy and eggplant. Upstate, that's 2 hours. Babe. Weekends only. Harry's enthusiasm dimmed, fork twirling noodles. Its expansion. Like us, rooted but reaching. The words masked fear. Of stagnation. Of the brownstone becoming a museum to grief rather than a launchpad for life. Chris nodded, but his jaw ticked, the tell of bottled storms. Bed that night was a negotiation. Touches tentative. Harry's hand sliding under Chris's tea to trace abs honed by pull-ups and pulls, eliciting a sigh that deepened to a groan. They made love sideways, spooned close, Chris entering from behind with languid thrusts, Harry's hand guiding his own pleasure in sync. Climax a gentle wave rather than a crash, intimate, but edged with unspoken. Karen's redemption arc bloomed unevenly, her visits now laced with questions. Ever think of kids? Evelyn would have spoiled 'em rotten. The notion lodged in Harry's mind like a seed in fertile soil, sprouting dreams of tiny hands smudged with crayons, lullabies sung in two-part harmony. He broached it with Chris during a rare quiet evening. Snow blanketing the city in hush, mulled wine steaming on the mantel. Surrogacy? Or fostering? We could. Chris's glass paused mid-sip, green eyes widening like a deer's in headlights. Kids? Now, with the co-op exploding, my shifts. The hesitation wasn't rejection, but a chasm. Chris's PTSD, a specter whispering unworthiness. Memories of orphaned kids he'd carried from infernos. Harry pressed. Voice soft. We're ready. Evelyn left room for more than two. The argument simmered low. Words like embers. Chris retreating to the fire escape for a smoke he swore he'd quit. Harry sketching phantom cribs that blurred into tears. Betrayal crept in disguise. A colleague of Chris's, Derek, a burly apparatus guy with a mustache like a 70s cop, pulling him aside at the station. Heard your house husbands now? Careful. Malone, legacy's heavy. The jab, casual as locker room banter, festered. Derek's invites to beers turning pointed. Real men build families the old way. Chris laughed it off to Harry, but the seed took. Doubts germinating in late shifts when he'd return hollow-eyed, collapsing into bed without the usual foreplay spark. Harry sensed it, initiating with a striptease in the living room, slow peel of shirt, sway of hips to Nina Simone crooning from the turntable, drawing Chris from the couch with a hunger that bordered desperation. They fucked against the bookshelf, books tumbling like applause, Chris's hands bruising hips as he drove deep, Harry's legs wrapped tight, cries muffled in shoulder. Mine, Chris growled. Possessive. The release a purge, but dawn brought awkward silences, the chasm widening. Climax ignited at the co-op's winter gala, a fundraiser in the expanded great room, chandeliers, Evelyn's crystal heirlooms, casting prisms over tuxes and gowns. Donors mingled with misfits, a tech mogul eyeing the upstate plot, Karen charming a councilwoman with tales of Evelyn's suffrage marches. Harry, in a velvet blazer tailored sharp, networked with fervor, but Chris arrived late, uniform rumpled from a warehouse blaze, soot streaking his jaw like war paint. Saved the whole block, he muttered, pulling Harry into an alcove for a kiss that tasted of adrenaline and ash. Proud, Harry breathed, hand dipping to palm the growing bulge. But Derek crashed the moment, clapping Chris's back too hard. Hero of the hour, bet the hubby here's got dinner waiting, apron and all. Laughter rippled, cutting, and Chris stiffened, pulling away. Fuck off, Derek. The gala blurred after. Toasts to enduring legacies, ringing hollow as Chris vanished to the rooftop, bottle in hand. Harry found him there, snowflakes melting on broad shoulders, city lights a glittering accusation below. Talk, Chris's voice cracked. Derek's right. I'm the muscle, you're the visionary. Kids, I'd fuck it up, pass on the nightmares. Betrayal poured out not from Harry, but self-inflicted, the inheritance a mirror reflecting inadequacies. Harry knelt in the snow, unbuckling Chris's belt with deliberate grace, mouth enveloping him in the cold bite, heat contrasting shock. Chris gasped, hands fisting curls, hips bucking as Harry worked with worshipful skill, tongue swirling until surrender shuddered forth, hot and affirming. You think you're broken? We're both patched quilts, Evelyn's favorites, pulled up into arms. They swayed, kisses salting with melt, the rooftop a confessional. Resolution dawned slow. Therapy sessions in a village walk-up. Chris unpacking flames with a soft-spoken shrink who quoted Audre Lorde. Harry joined once, their hands linked on the couch, voicing the terror of loss. Karen mediated family therapy, her own divorce scars bared, forging a fragile tribe. The upstate retreat broke ground in April, a cabin cluster amid Catskills pines. First residence artists fleeing Florida's Don't Say Gay gales. Chris led the build, hammer swings therapy, while Harry designed interiors, lofts with skylights for stargazing lovers. Romance reignited in the dirt, a tent pitched on site, sleeping bags zipped to one. Chris's fingers exploring Harry's body by lantern light, prostate milked with expert curl until he keened, then flipping to ride the wave of Chris's thrusts, dirt-streaked and delirious. Summer solstice brought the surrogacy consult, a sunlit office in Chelsea, pamphlets promising families by design. Chris's hand trembled in Harry's, but his yes was firm, green eyes alight. Karen offered to host the baby shower, redemption's full circle. Evelyn's bench visit became monthly, stories evolving. She'd say, "Make your own chaos, loves," as fireflies danced in jars at the co-op picnic. Harry and Chris slipped away to the garden. Under moon vines, love urgent, Chris on his back, Harry's mouth trailing south, rimming with teasing laps before sinking down. Reverse cowboy to the symphony of crickets, climaxes sinking like breaths. Fall's harvest moon saw the pregnancy confirm. Their surrogate, Lena, a painter from the co-op with a laugh like bells. Ultrasounds became date nights, tiny heartbeats a drumbeat to futures. Betrayal's embers cooled to wisdom. Love's drama not in conflicts, but crossings, human arcs bending toward light. The brownstone, ever the heart, hosted the reveal party. Blue and pink balloons for surprise, Karen toasting with tears, to unexpected gifts. In the quiet after, Harry and Chris made love in the nursery to be. Walls bare but echoing potential. Bodies gentle. Hands on bellies imagining. Release a soft affirmation of growth. Winter circled back. Snow deeper, but warmth within. Kicks felt through Lena's visits. Chris reading Goodnight Moon to Harry's swell of joy. Humanism triumphed in small graces. The co-op's elders mentoring Lena. Vance's firm sponsoring a scholarship in Evelyn's name. Their story, once tabloid fodder, inspired a doca short, Terminal Love, screening at Tribeca to standing ovations. As the due date neared, Harry sketched the family. 3 silhouettes under rainbows, Chris's arm encompassing all. "Ours," he whispered, sealing it with a kiss that promised eternities. The nursery's walls glowed soft yellow under Edison bulbs. A mural Harry had painted wrapping the crib in whimsical forests. Deer with antlers of intertwined vines, rabbits in bow ties, a nod to Evelyn's fairy tale spun on stormy eves. February's grip loosened into March's thaw, the city exhaling after winter's clench, puddle jumps echoing like applause for renewal. Lena's belly swelled round as a harvest moon, her cravings catered by co-op rotations. Kimchi tacos from Jamal, lavender scones from Karen, who'd taken to knitting booties with pride flag stripes. Harry's hand rested on the curve during visits, feeling the flutter, a butterfly rebellion against the world's weights. Chris hovered, his lieutenant's calm fracturing into wide-eyed awe, whispering, "Hey, kiddo," to the bump like a secret code. Their love had weathered to something elemental. Not the bonfire of early days, but embers banked hot, ready to flare. Yet no arc lacks shadow. The birth loomed like a horizon storm, excitement laced with terror, Chris's nightmares spiking, visions of sirens not for joy but peril, the warehouse collapse replaying with a bassinet in the flames. "What if I'm not enough?" he'd confess in the dark. Harry's body curled to his spooning comfort. "You're everything," Harry murmured, hand dipping low to stroke life into doubt, fingers wrapping velvet steel, pumping slow until Chris arched, spilling with a broken moan. Lovemaking shifted tender, missionary with gazes locked, Chris entering shallow, rocking to the rhythm of heartbeats shared. Harry's legs hooked at ankles, climax a mutual bloom that left them slick and sated, foreheads pressed in pact. Betrayal's final whisper came veiled as concern. Derek, reformed or feigning, cornering Chris at a union barbecue in Flushing Meadows, beers foaming under picnic oaks. "Congrats on the ankle biter, but surrogacy? That's some Hollywood shit. Real dads knock boots the old-fashioned." The barb hooked deep, dredging insecurities of not man enough from Chris's Catholic upbringing. Boston winters where fairy was slung like snowballs. He drowned it in IPAs, arriving home late, breath sour, collapsing into bed without undress. Harry woke to the distance, rolling atop, kisses trailing jaw to collar, unbuttoning with teeth. "Talk, fireman." Chris resisted at first, then cracked, "Derek says we're playing house." "What if the kid senses it, the difference?" Harry's response was action. Straddling, grinding fabric-clad, then shedding to sink onto him bare. Velvet heat enveloping inch by inch, rides deliberate and deep, drawing gasps that purged poison. "Our house. Our rules." Release came fierce, Chris's hands bruising hips, Harry's name a litany as they shattered together. Afterglow confessions spilling. "I love you. Us. Flaws and all." Climax crested in the delivery room at NYU Langone. Monitors beeping a techno heartbeat. Lena's grip iron on Harry's hand as she pushed, sweat sheened and fierce. Chris paced the hall, then burst in at the cry, a boy's wail sharp as New Year's horns, collapsing to knees beside the bed, tears carving tracks through soot of imagined fires. Liam, Lena named him, after her grandfather, eyes crinkling as she placed the squirming bundle in Harry's arms. Then Chris's, the circle complete. Tiny fists waved. Blue eyes. Evelyn's eyes. Blinking at the world, a gummy yawn sealing fates. The hospital room became sanctuary. Karen cooing from the rocking chair, Mia snapping Polaroids, the co-op's cheer relayed via video call, Jamal reciting a haiku for the new warrior poet. Homecoming was fanfare. The brownstone festooned in streamers, elders lining the stoop with casseroles and advice. Sleep when the baby sleeps? Sleep when you can. Liam's first night was symphony and chaos. Feeds at 2 a.m. Chris changing diapers with a surgeon's focus. Harry humming Somewhere Over the Rainbow to soothe colic wails. Exhaustion bonded them deeper. Stolen naps tangled on the couch. Liam between. Tiny snores sinking breaths. Romance persisted in margins of 4 a.m. Bottle where Chris's free hand cupped Harry's jaw for a kiss milk-scented and sweet. Or bath times turning playful. Suds flying as Harry soaped Chris's chest. Leading to the towel rack. Quick and quiet. Harry's mouth sealing moans as Chris thrust into welcoming heat. Humanism flowered in the mundane. Karen's weekly visits evolving to overnights. Her stories of Evelyn's pregnancies lulling Liam to dream. The co-op adapted, a playpen in the great room, Artists cooing over chubby thighs. Murals gaining cherubs with halos of light. Vance's donation funded a childcare co-op, turning threat to nurture. Derek's apology came sheepish over coffee. Jealous. Man. My ex left, 'cause I couldn't. Forged in shared fatherhood's forge. Chris's nightmares ebbed, replaced by dawn patrols of the nursery, watching Liam's chest rise-fall like tides. Summer returned. Liam's first pride a parade of onesies and wagon floats. The brownstone's facade a canvas of tiny handprints in paint. Harry sketched the trio. Chris hoisting Liam on shoulders, rainbow flags whipping, their laughter a chord in the city's roar. Evenings on the rooftop, fireflies mimicking monitors. They made love under stars lazy, exploratory. Chris's tongue mapping Harry's length before flipping to 69. Mutual devotions culminating in swallows and shudders. Our legacy, Chris breathed, as Liam babbled from the monitor. Years blurred. Liam's first steps across the Persian rug, tumbling into arms, kindergarten finger paints of Dada Harry and Papa Chris, rainbows mandatory. The upstate retreat hosted family camps, queers and allies forging bonds amid pines. Karen remarried, a gentle librarian who baked better pie than Evelyn, blending families and potlucks where stories overlapped like quilts. Betrayal's tales became teachable. Grandma Evelyn chose love. Harry explained to wide eyes, even when it hurt. On Liam's 5th birthday, they revisited the terminal. Bench plaque polished bright, balloons aloft as a train whooshed by. She left us you, Chris said, hoisting the boy, Harry's hand in his, Karen snapping the photo a frame for the mantel. Romance endured, anniversaries in the Mustang, top down on coastal drives, hands linked over gearshift, nights where passion reignited fierce. Chris pinning Harry to the hood under moonlight, thrusts urgent as youth, cries carried by waves. In America's tapestry, frayed, vibrant, they wove enduring thread, dramatic falls to romantic rises, conflicts to humanistic harmonies. Evelyn's will, once a spark, kindled a blaze, unabandoned, unexpected, utterly theirs. Love, in the end, left everything. Hearts full, horizons wide.